Yeah, the copies are coming around, folks, so, our fabulous OAs are helping out here.
I got one more.
No, you need one more?
No. Here, one more. Extra one.
Oh,
No, you can't
and
buy
which
it.
one is that? Oh, that's my, who doesn't have a copy of the buyer broker yet? Right here? And you don't have the real estate agent yet either? Okay.
Okay, guys, let's get started. So thank you. A wonderful turnout. This is better turnout than I was anticipating. We have another.
That's because you got the top end speaker.
I'm not so sure we even introduced. Did anybody even know? Let's cut this guy's ego down a little bit. Did anybody even know Paul was going to be our speaker today?
Yes, I paid because Paul.
See,
There you go.
that shoots that theory down, don't
Paid
it?
a couple of them. Yeah. So Paul's been around a good time, or a good time, a long time.
I'm a good time, too.
He's a good time too. Yeah, I consider him a friend. He and I do a lot of joking around together, and oftentimes my face hurts after 5 minutes of talking with him from laughing so much. So he's a good guy. So Paul's been around for quite a while. I don't know that he's been in the real estate industry as long as I have, but I know that he's been with Realty One Group for 5 years longer than I have. So Paul and his partner, Lisa Glomsky, run one of the more successful teams, not only in this office, but in all of Realty One Group. So if you have any interest potentially in exploring the team route, he'd be an ideal person to talk to. So this is class 1 of 7 classes, buyer broker agreement today, as well as the agency. We have another class. He's going to teach class 1. I'm teaching classes 2 through 6. Welcome. Buyer broker agreement today, listing agreement, 2-part purchase. Pardon me. Oh, okay.
All right.
So buyer broker agreement, listing agreement, buyer contingency addendum, seller compensation addendum, and then a 2-part purchase contract class. So with that being said, let's turn it over to Paul.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. As JP had mentioned, yeah, I've been around. I've been a licensed broker now for 27 years across 3 states, currently here in Arizona. It's appropriate in my mind that this is the first class of JP7's part series, primarily from the perspective that this is the foundation of everything we do. And it has always been that. But up until September of last year, it wasn't a mandatory requirement, which it is now. And you are all aware with the agreements that were made with NAR and the associations. These are now prerequisite for you to be showing properties and engaging with clients. There's two aspects of this, and as we're putting this together, that JP and I had talked about, and one of them is obviously the content, which I think most of you are familiar with, and we'll go over that briefly. But then the other part of it is, I think, is how do you present this? Because I think, and so if I were to ask the group here, show of hands, which do you struggle at all with the content and the meaning of what's in these documents? Anybody? A little bit. Okay. Who is here primarily hoping to get the secret sauce to presenting this to clients comfortably? And okay, so we're going to address that. Now, interestingly enough, these documents is something that way back when I started 27 years ago, and I had a lot more hair there then, and it was darker too, but this is the result of being in real estate for going on 3 decades. The point being is that I was fortunate, and my journey started in Minnesota, that our brokerage there emphasized this right out of the gate. So this was something from day one, even though it wasn't required and mandatory, that I started doing. Back then, it was an equation of how many times did you engage somebody, spend some time with them, you check back with them, and it's, oh, I'm sorry, but I am working with another agent. Does that ever happen to anybody? Yeah, a couple times. So that was part of the protection aspect of it back then. I think the key here, though, is that the posture you should take mentally as you present this is from the standpoint that this is not about you as an agent. It's more about protecting the client and making sure that they get the highest level of service that is available. That was how we used to explain it before, but now there's an addition to that, and that is, and as a matter of fact, Minnesota state statute requires me to have one of these with you before we engage and start looking at properties and have discussions about real estate. So in a perfect world, this should make this a little bit easier, because now it isn't an option and it isn't you putting it on them. It's the state of Arizona putting it on them. And so when it's all said and done, though, there's some seats right here. Oh, okay. So when it's all said and done, the whole thing about this is treat this as a normal part of the process. That's how you want to frame this. That's how you want to present this. And so for buyers that have either are brand new, that's probably easier because they look to you as the authority. So what you're doing is you're explaining to them, here's how the process works. So one of the easiest ways to accomplish that is, who here, by show of hands, when they connect with a new client, however that happens, the first thing they do is say, I would like to take a few minutes, sit down with you and make sure that I totally understand what it is you're looking for, and so that I can give you the highest level of service. How many people do that? Step one, right out of the gate. Okay. How many people go out and start showing houses before they had that conversation in terms of that process? Anybody? Okay, good. Because number one, you should, but number two, it makes the whole part of the equation a lot more difficult. So this is part of that process. So the process, or the we call it a buyer broker session or consultant or orientation. We call it a buyer orientation. Use those words. That's really easy. Say, listen, I want to make sure that this is the best real estate experience you have had or will ever have. And one of the ways I can assure that happens is that for us to spend a few minutes together in a buyer orientation so that you know what to expect, what the steps are, and there's no surprises. And also, too, the first thing that we always tell them is that our team, one of the biggest things that we strive for is total transparency so that you're comfortable, you know what's going on. As I say, surprises are great for Christmas and birthdays, but not in real estate, because that isn't what anybody's bargaining for. So I'm also a big proponent of setting expectations up front. Because if you do this, and you're doing the proper steps in the proper sequence, then the whole thing is going to flow a lot easier for you from that standpoint. So as we set this up, we've got some new setups here from tech. So the first form, and I apologize to those of you online on the Zoom call. So if you have a way to pull it up or you have a copy, that won't appear, but we're going to start there anyway. And the reason we're starting there is because the real estate disclosure is referenced in the buyer broker agreement.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
Everybody on Zoom can see your screen.
Right, but they can't see the disclosure because we didn't load it.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So
Okay. Sorry.
thank you. Do you have an extra copy of those?
Of course.
For me? Yeah, please. So we'll start real quick, and again, I'm going to give you a quick overview of how we explain this on the team, and then we'll reference real quickly, make sure there's no misunderstandings about what this actually says. So it starts out with the real estate agency disclosure, right? That's number one. First form that we're required by Minnesota statute, or Arizona statute rather, to present with the client, and as it was stated and is that at first contact. So essentially what this does, and I tell them, okay, first document here is a disclosure. It doesn't obligate you for anything. It's just my requirement by the state of Arizona to give you this to let you know who the players are in a typical real estate transaction. And they're listed right here. Normally what I do is a buyer, I'll circle the buyer broker section and say, starting out, this is the position or this is the function I'm going to be doing for you. We are going to be your broker. I'm an associate broker here, but the brokerage, as you know, we are all operating with clients of the brokerage, not you personally. You're an agent of the broker. So with that being said, the first paragraph, and I don't read this word for word, because if you do, you're gonna lose people, you're gonna put them to sleep. What I do say is I'm gonna give you a brief summary of this. And after we get through these sections, if you have some questions or something you don't understand, please let me know. And I'm happy to go back and make sure that you don't have any questions on it. And then I also say you'll get copies of everything we go over and sign today. If you have trouble sleeping tonight, pull it out, read it word for word, and you'll be very a quick sleep will ensue after doing that. That being said, buyer broker, what we are going to do for you from this second forward, moving forward through this entire journey, is protect you and make sure that your interests are protected every step through this process. We are your advocate. We are going to protect you through the entire transaction. We're going to make sure that everything goes to your benefit if possible, and make sure that you have full understanding of everything that's going to happen, so there will not be any surprises. The second one here is the seller's broker. I tell our clients, I don't worry about the seller, not that I don't care, but they have their own agent, they have their own representation to take care of them on the journey. So my focus is on you, and everything we do is for your benefit. And that includes information that we as an agent or associate broker can gain directly or indirectly about a property, the seller's motivations, and we find that out somehow from a neighbor. You know, we're showing a property, the neighbor comes running out and always wants to know what's going on. And I love neighbors getting involved in my process, because if you want the true source and real world viewpoint of that neighborhood, nothing better than the person living right there. And if you do that, take a minute, and I do that all the time. I'll walk over if they're tending the garden and introduce myself, even if they didn't ask what's going on. And how long you been here? What do you like about the neighborhood? How are the neighbors? All valuable information. And if you take that extra step, you're going to impress your client that you're the type of agent that they're definitely happy to be working with, because you're not just going through the motions. You're doing everything, again, an extra step to their benefit. Questions on any of that? Okay. Then we mentioned the third scenario, which is a broker representing both the seller and the buyer, limited representation in our language. And I tell them that if during our journey we encounter a property that is listed by our brokerage, then we fall into category 3. Now, I want to explain that real quickly, because the odds are that may not happen. But if it does, I'll alert you of that, and understand that a lot of times when these things were written, it was under a different construct of the way brokerages look today. Today, in our Glendale office, how many agents, JP?
380.
380 agents, okay? This is the first time I've seen some of you, even though we're all part of the same office. And the entire brokerage agent count?
Almost 3,000.
Almost 3,000, okay? So the reality is, a listing agent with Realty One Group, you may not know, you may never have met, and so the practical aspect of this is as if it's an agent from another brokerage, as far as how it actually works. And I explain that to people. But the technicality says that we are representing both the buyer and the seller. So I assure them that there's a wall that goes up whenever this happens. Everything they tell me is confidential. I will not disclose it to the other side or the other agent, even though we're both agents in the same brokerage. So you can rest assured that that wall exists, and it's on both sides. The listing agent will not disclose anything that would jeopardize the seller, and I will not disclose anything that would put you at a disadvantage in terms of negotiating or anything else. And that's pretty much what this thing says. That's how I present it. And then the last thing here is on page 2. Again, I reinforce that this is not anything in terms of a contract or an employment. It's just a disclosure, and we will be getting to that in a minute. And that's where we go to the buyer broker employment agreement. So now everybody on the call on video can see what we're talking about. And this is, of course, that form that everybody's familiar with.
You got about 14 on there.
Okay. So this is, again, the basis of everything that we do, right? So, how many people have heard, as they're going through this, somebody say, yeah, I get it, but I don't want to be tied down to somebody or committed? Anybody? Nobody's heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Or how about at the end of it, I wanna take this home, read it over, and think about it.
Yeah.
Anybody? Nobody? Yeah, okay. If you thoroughly explain this in a concise manner that is comfortable and practiced, and by the way, that's something this team does that I am part of running, is we practice everything that we do. And we do that daily. We do that every morning so that our team is so proficient with these documents that they know them inside and out. They can answer any question about them. And so find if you're not part of a team, find somebody that you know, another agent that maybe you have lunch with occasionally, whatever. Get together, practice with them. You know, that's just the way that you get better, that you get more comfortable, because you want to reach the point that, like I have, my partner Lisa has, our team has, where this is no big deal. It's just part of the process. And when you're comfortable, that translates to the buyer because they're not feeling apprehensive. If you're apprehensive or a little iffy on how you present this, that's going to translate to them. So you want to make sure you're very proficient, you know everything that's contained within this thing, and you've practiced it so that you're able to do that. And part of that is too, is that when you're presenting it, you have two options. You know, sometimes we'll throw it up on the big screen in the conference room when we go through it so that they can see it, or we'll give them a copy and we'll sit down and we read it upside down. We know it so well, so we're able to do that. Okay, so it starts out very quickly with who the buyer is, our brokerage, and you as the agent. As we go through this, I tell them that this is you engaging us or me as your agent to represent you moving forward on all things that are part of this this journey of this transaction. And so I want to make sure that you know what the rules are and who it is that you're working with from that perspective. And so you are going to engage me, or you're going to hire us to represent you and make sure that your interests are protected at all times moving forward, and that you are authorizing, giving us the power, the agency, to work on your behalf, to locate and find the right properties, to do the research, to engage with listing agents, to find out everything we know about the property. You are basically putting me to work for your benefit the minute that you and I both agree that this is what we're going to do. So again, the emphasis here is on what they are getting for this. People are motivated by their best interests, not from a selfish standpoint, but they're going to be hesitant to engage or to execute or whatever else that might look like if they don't feel that this is in their best interest. So you need to express that in that presentation, that this is not about me, it's about you and making sure you're protected so that everything goes according to what your plans are, that we're able to find, locate, negotiate at a high level and get you the property that you're looking for in the fastest amount of time for the best terms and the best price available. And that's what you're going to do by us entering in this agreement together. Every contract or document in the state of Arizona needs to have a beginning date and an end date. So you got to make sure those are in there. Every once in a while, compliance will flag you because that two of those blanks were left open. Okay. Now, the time factor here is something that I leverage. You know, you should be familiar with all our contracts and our forms and find places that you can leverage that. And this is one of those. So that person that is negligent or hesitant to execute this because they don't want to be tied down for 6 months or 3 months or whatever time frame that is. You know, our standard is 6 months on this. We'll go to 9 months or 6 months. We'll go to 90 days if necessary. I have done these for as little as 1 hour. And then before we go to the next place, it's like, how you like me so far? You feel comfortable? Are we ready to do this? Because I'll bring the copy with me, and then we automatically, and these days we have the addendum to the buyer broker agreement. I have one of those always at all times in the car. Our agents have a packet of every single document that we do with them in their trunk or in their car somewhere in a folder. Does everybody have that type of setup? If you don't, I encourage you to do that because you never know when the opportunity might arise or the need might arise. And so, odds are, you've talked with them, you spent some time, you showed them a house, everything is going really great. There's 5 more to see, and the conversation is pretty quick. Well, how are you feeling? Are you comfortable? Are you ready to go on this journey together? Because if so, we need to extend our agreement because it is already expired. Pretty easy conversation, right? And that takes I don't want to be tied down with somebody for X amount of time. So then it's up to you to use your skills, your superpowers to make sure that they feel that they're with the right person. Next line we talk about, it identifies the type of property. JP mentioned him and I joke around a lot. You know, real estate is at its basis an equation of relationships. Everything we do, all the technology is smoke and mirrors. Everything else that we talk about leads to the relationship. Once you have that relationship, the rest gets really, really easy. So I encourage all of you to, when we have that buyer orientation, we don't even talk about real estate. First thing is, I want to get to know them. Why is now the right time to get a house? Where are you originally from? How many kids you got? What school are they going to? I'll spend the first 5 or 10 minutes just talking about everything and anything other than real estate. Because I know if I can create a relationship, the rest of this is not a challenge. It's very, very easy. And so, I will take an opportunity to lighten up everything about this thing, although I never let them forget how important I know this process is for them, and make sure that they feel cared for, protected throughout the entire journey. So when we go to this one, it's like it's residential, right? And I ask them, but I've got access to a shopping center if you'd like to explore that, And it's like, oh, I don't know. Next one talks about to negotiate buyer's direction obtain acceptable terms, conditions of the purchase, exchange, or option of the property. This is that negotiation aspect. This is that agency aspect. This is that part of this equation that I'm going to do for you at a level that's higher than anything you've ever experienced before or ever will experience moving forward. Moving through this here, we have agency relationship. This is why we started with the real estate agency disclosure. Right here, it's referenced. And say, remember that form we just went through earlier? That says that everything I told you there applies here, so that's why we're checking the first box. Property viewings. Part of what you have empowered me to do for you is show you every property available for sale in the MLS. In addition to that, though, I always want to know, is somebody considering new construction? Because right now, have you noticed? Boy, do the builders love us right now, huh? Boy, are they calling us? Are they dropping us emails? We got a deal. Reaching out. Hey, I just want to let you know, I just forwarded you a copy of the registration for your client. Or I always call ahead. And I've had conversation with so many of these builder reps over the years that I already know them and they know me. And I'm at the point now when I say, hey, I've got a client that wants to take a look at Avante. What's your availability? And you got any hot deals right now? Hey, Paul, good to hear from you. Yeah, what's the client's name? I'll fill out that registration form for you so it's ready when you get here. Which is a lot different than having to struggle through the whole thing. Or they give you the form and say, hey, we fill all this up. My life's pretty easy these days because I've done that. And if you don't have that relationship, isn't that hard right now to form it? Take a day. Go visit all those reps that are out there at the various subdivision or various new construction subdivisions that are going on there. Introduce yourself. Say, hey, how's it going? You know, bring them. You know, I tell you what, the easiest and the cheapest way to engage someone, bring them a gift. And when it's hot out, I'll bring them a cold iced tea. Say, hey, I don't know if you need one of these, but here you go. It's pretty hot out there today. If you do that also, that opens the door because most buyers, or a lot of buyers rather, are sellers also, right? And I have relationships with the builder reps out there that when they get somebody that has a property to sell, they haven't already listed it. They offer and say, hey, I know a really good listing agent on the west side. Is that somebody that you'd like to talk to? That'll help you get your house sold so you can get this brand new one at the sexy 2.99 and have to reduce and plus the $10,000 closing costs. So I'll get those calls just because I took some extra time to make a relationship. So the property viewings thing is important because we mentioned if you are considering new construction, there is a rule that says if I'm not with you on that first visit, the builder is going to lock us out of your equation, which means my hands are tied and I can no longer represent you in that transaction. I don't want that to happen, and I'm sure you don't either, because what a lot of people don't realize is that there still is a place and a function for a buyer agent in new construction. A lot of people don't think that. Well, those prices are set. This is the options that are there. There's really nothing you can negotiate. Wrong. I have done that numerous times. Has anybody negotiated a new construction? Show of hands. Yeah, that can be done, right? And so let them know that. Tell them, here's the reality. These agents, and they are agents, work for the builder. Remember we talked about the disclosure form on the seller agent? That's what they are doing. They are working for the benefit of the builder. That doesn't mean they can lie to you or misrepresent anything, but they're not going to cut you a better deal just because. But if I'm with you, I may get you an extra option or some, some extra landscaping or a kitchen upgrade or whatever that looks like. So make sure you mention that and make sure that they are aware that they need to have you along with them on the ride. Buyer agrees to review the Arizona Department of Real Estate buyer advisory. We also have a copy of that available, and that's the big long form, right, with all the links on everything that somebody needs to know about Arizona real estate. It's all contained within there. Broker compensation not set by law nor by any board, association, realtors, multiple listing service in any manner other than as fully negotiated by buyer broker in this agreement. Boom, there it is. There's a summary of all the lawsuits and everything else that shifted back in September. Right there. And so, in mentioning that, that's kind of how I put it at this point, and I'll tell them we'll go into detail as we go through this because there'll be some other aspects of this that will come up. So now we're down to a retainer fee. I don't know if any of you do those. Probably up to you, but we don't. Team doesn't. So I use that again as a lever. Like I said, I'm all about leverage. So I go, this is in here because there are some agents and some brokerages that will charge you a retainer fee just for engaging with you. We don't do that because what we're putting first is you're not going to pay us extra for our time in this consultation. And so that one will not be checked or filled in because that is what we do. Then we get to the compensation. And this is the part that I tell them, this is what has changed in the world of real estate on how agents engage with you. Of course, we're compensated. This is what we do for our living to pay our bills and take care of our families and send them to school and college and everything else. So just as you do, you work really hard also. The magic of our compensation, though, now is the fact that we can actually request the seller of any house you choose, any property you choose, to pay us on your behalf. So this is an opportunity for you to engage with one of the top performing agents or teams in this metro area at a maybe slightly higher compensation rate. But the good news is you're not going to pay it. Because since September of last year, our team has a record of not only getting that covered, but covered at a 3% level. Really. This is all about value. This is all about giving people a reason that you are worth that, if not more. And when I mentioned that, and that's what's going to go into the line, right? It's 3% of the full purchase price. And I tell them, every once in a while there'll be an agent or seller who doesn't think we're worth that. I'm going to show you that we are, and probably even more than that, because one thing that we will most likely do is save you that much through our negotiation power, our proper selection, our research, and the rest of it that goes along with this. But again, the great thing about this is the seller is going to pay for this, that you're not. Does that sound okay with you? And is that the way you want me to approach any negotiations that we enter into on the property that you select? That's the question I ask the buyer.
Yeah.
And of course, they say yes, of course. Okay. So when I get a pushback, it happens a lot. It just happened to me just a week ago. I kindly remind the seller's agent that, of course, everything is negotiable, but this 3% is out of that lane because my client has instructed me to make this part of any accepted agreement or contract for the purchase of your seller's property that we enter into. And in addition to that, I tell our buyers, if there's space or if we can figure it out, we're also going to get you some additional seller concessions from them directly to you to offset your closing costs, use it as a rate buy down, whatever that looks like. Has anybody noticed that the sellers and the seller agents are a little more negotiable right now than they have been in a long, long time? How many of you in this room, by show of hands, have been in the business for more than 7 years? Keep your hands up. 10 years. 15? Okay. That's your advantage because you have seen something that looked a little bit like this market before. But all the licensees that have just come into this thing in the last 7 years have not. That's why a lot of them are struggling. They're like, whoa, stuff I was doing before is not working. I'm not getting people calling me. What's going on? Well, what's going on is we have more inventory than we have had in a long, long time. I'm a numbers guy. That's my team. I'm hammering them about numbers all the time. Everything from absorption rates to conversion rates to property adjustment, pricing. Everybody here use the Cromford report? Who doesn't? Highly recommend that you check that out. It's not a high cost option, but what that does, it gives you total visibility in what's going on in terms of every sector, every zip code. You know exactly, and if you don't subscribe to that and you're out there doing transactions, I think you are missing the boat and you possibly might be doing a disservice to your clients because you don't know the market as well as you should. And that's a prerequisite for representing them to the highest level. So, moving on here, we talk a little bit about VA. That is, if you got a VA buyer, you'll address that. If you don't, but essentially what it says that there are certain charges that a buyer cannot pay on their own behalf if it's a VA loan. Well, I've been doing it for 27 years, and that's drastically changed. There used to be a lot of additional ones. They're down to hardly nothing anymore. And I think it is a termite inspection, which, depending on the home inspector you use, that they give you the termite inspection. So that becomes pretty much a nominal.
Buyer's not allowed to pay for a termite inspection?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
So you have to ask the seller.
Yeah. Yeah. Or get an inspector that's part of the inspection. BBG does it. I don't know. There's probably one or two other ones out there that anybody know other than BBG who gives you a free termite inspection? Okay. Fire Protection Group, that is a home inspection company. Failure to complete this, we talk about that really quickly. Once an acceptable property is located by our agrees to act in good faith to acquire the property, conduct any inspection investigation. I don't read that word for it again. I say, this clause right here says that once we find the right one and we go under contract, you're going to do everything that you're supposed to do in order to close on the property. As long as it passes the inspection and we get a proper appraisal. Are you going to do that? That's what I ask them. And they say, well, of course, I want to buy the property. I say, yeah, there's a couple clauses in here that are pretty simple and basic, but we want to mention them anyway. Next one we talk about is listings. Show property listings that fit the buyer's criteria regardless of the compensation offered to the broker. We talk about that because if there's ever a pushback or an agent accuses you of something that is leveraging your compensation and standing in the way, and I actually had this conversation real quickly. Was negotiating a property, we'll do what I normally do, which is it's 3%. We had additional concessions in there. We killed those. We got down to the bare minimum of the only thing we're asking is for the 3%. And the agent sends a counter 3 that resets it again back to 2.5. And I called her. I said, hey, do we have, maybe I missed something. And I'll own it. Did we not have this conversation that the only thing we're asking for is just the compensation? And why are we getting a counter 3 here pushing back against that? And her response to me was, well, the seller thinks that 2.5% is appropriate, and I have to agree because we're seeing a lot of 2.5%. I don't care what you're seeing. Now, this is my internal conversation, and this is my thought process. I don't care what you're seeing. There is no normal. There is no average. And I said, well, here's where we're at. Decision time for your seller. And what we were talking about, too, the purchase price was $300,000. So we're talking about $1,500. And they've been on market for 95 days. And I said, your seller's got to make a decision. I totally respect whatever that decision is. But since my buyer has instructed me, my client has instructed me to get this covered. It's the only thing they're asking. I don't think it's unreasonable, but that's my opinion. I leave it up to you to decide. And she said to me, well, I'm only getting 2.5% on this, and I'm not going to lower my commission to get you 3%. I said, I never had that asked. We didn't even have this conversation. I have a hard time understanding why you're bringing it up. This is between the seller and the buyer. This is not about me. It's not about you. It's his decision on whether he's going to do this. And to which point she said, well, I think he's reached his final decision. And so you're telling me you're not going to let this go forward for 0.5%. I go, once again, I'm not telling you anything. This is the buyer's instruction to me. I am a fiduciary as you do. I'm simply following their instructions and following through the way that they want this thing to look like. To which point she says, well, that's too bad. I'll check with the seller. Long story short, they were going to move off of it. And here's the deal. More than one choice out there right now. Right? And there were other properties that were available. And I went back to my buyer and I said, here's where we're at. And I said, I got to be honest with you. This isn't about me. It's not about the compensation. But if this seller is this dug in on a $1,500 ask, what do you think this thing looks like once we're under contract? What do you think happens if we find something in the inspection and we have to negotiate that? What do you think is going to happen if we have possibly a low appraisal? What? Well, they're probably going to, in a word. But options are we're going to have more and more and more problems, right? And I said, my opinion is we're better off finding a better alternative. But that's your decision, and I will not let this stand in the way. She goes, no, Paul, we agree 100% with you. So I got a text from this agent who's currently enrolled in a broker course. Her text says, and I responded, but I won't necessarily tell you what that was. Let's see here. She says this. I'll find it, but I'll summarize for you. She said in a text, I guess I don't understand why, I guess it goes back to this, why you're standing in the way of letting this transaction move forward. The buyer broker clearly states, and this is what she said in her text, that an agent is prohibited from using the compensation to interfere with a transaction. Okay? We're not under contract. There is no transaction. There's no interference. She brings that up and then says, and you are required to accept any compensation that is deemed reasonable. And I'm going, that if you check, that language does not appear anywhere in this document.
Anywhere they.
It does not. Because they're all independent individually, per the transaction, per the contract. Well, I'll leave for you to figure out what my response was to that, but we'll move on. Huh? Tell you? I kind of reminded her that you might want to go back and check the section in your broker class that has to do with the buyer broker agreement, because what you're stating here is 100% false. And it's that kind of information that's put out that confuses the public and makes them not understand, because she ended that text with, and my seller knows this. Were you going to say something?
Well, yeah, I was gonna, let me say something real quick, because you mentioned compensation interfering with the transaction, interfering with the closing. So we've always believed from the beginning of time, and it was true, so we believed it. We all experienced it. Agents could not allow a compensation dispute to interfere with the closing, right? We've all heard that before, right? So that changed. That is no longer the case. Now you can, because in the past you couldn't. Why? Because the compensation wasn't agreed to between buyer and seller. It was in MLS with the listing broker's agreement with the buyer's brokers. The two brokers agreeing, wasn't the buyer and seller. Now, with the requirement of the buyer broker agreement, with the seller compensation addendum, broker commission is literally built into the contract now. That was never the case prior to August of 2024. So now you actually can do that.
And I make a case that that's language that should be altered or struck, because technically it no longer applies, as you said.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, absent of an edit by the department, I reminded her of her error, that she might want to revisit things and be factual. Yeah, Paul.
What do you line 54 blank, please?
Line 54. Oh, skip that. We do 90 days. And I explained it to them that this is a clause that is in here that basically states this. We've taken the time and the effort to find the property, show it to you, do the research, get it all ready for you to make an offer. And then you decide to pick up the phone, call another agent, and write the offer with them. That's such a bizarre scenario. It's never happened to me in 27 years. I like you, you're honorable. That's not going to happen here, but it's in there. So we'll put that number, that 90 days in there, but it can be any amount of time, because we know it's something that's not going to happen. Did that answer the question? We move on
Question,
to,
sorry.
and as a last to wrap this up, a buyer decides they do not wish to view property listing unless the seller or seller's broker has offered adequate compensation to the broker. The buyer must make that instruction to the broker in writing. Since we clearly state that that isn't a way that it works in our world.
For starts, Brenda, be calling and ask, right?
Yeah. They say, listen, this is so important to me. Then I don't want to see anything if it says that. And here's the thing, I guess when this thing first started, remember there was that whole debate and then people, the sky is falling and how are we going to know? And do we call the agent first and say, is there any compensation? You know, is the seller open to compensation? And from day one, I never made one of those calls. You know, I can't see the future, but what I can see is what this was going to evolve to. So another maybe clause that should be adjusted when they get rid of the other one. Equal housing opportunity, you explain to them, we're licensed agents in the state of Arizona. Thereby, we have to abide by all fair housing rules. We don't discriminate against people, areas, religions, all the rest that we know. And so that's stated. Other potential buyers, I mentioned this only from the perspective that I want to let you know you're not my only client. But when I'm with you, you are my only client. Any other phone calls, text, anything, I will return once we have completed our business. And I'm sure you understand that if it's the other situation, you will hear back from me as soon as possible. Why I'm most likely with a client. Does that sound fair? Nobody doesn't have a problem with that. Release of the broker. This says here, essentially, I sum it up, that we are real estate agents. We're not property inspectors. We're not HVAC contractors. We're not pool contractors, roofers, or any of the like. Of course, I've been doing this long enough that I have above average knowledge of all these things, but I will be the first to recommend to you that you find a specialist in whatever area that there's an issue with and consult them to make sure you're getting the full and accurate story. Additional terms and conditions, we don't usually have those, but that would be a place you could put in, like maybe if it's for because the buyer broker doesn't allow for hours, you can put in there. This agreement is for 24. It is for 1 hour only, 2 hours only. If you get into that kind of thing, you can put it there. Alternate dispute resolution ADR. We talk about that. I tell them very quickly that you will see this in a lot of the paperwork that we or the documents that we put together. It appears here. It appears in the contract, purchase contract. And I tell them this is the method of resolving issues. There's a lot of players in a transaction. You're a buyer. There's a seller. There's a seller agent. There's a buyer agent. There's an inspector. There's a title company. There's all kinds of people here. If you feel you've been wrong by any individual involved, you can file a complaint. You don't have to go to court. You don't have to hire an overpaid lawyer. Hope there's no lawyers in here or lawyer families. I am just general speak. And it's a way to resolve those conflicts. An individual trained in these matters listens to both sides of the story, decides who's right, who's wrong, and awards damages that feel that they're warranted. You never give up or waive your right to go to court, but it's a lot cheaper, a much better way of resolving issues. There is a built-in protection here too, though, that I don't know if any of you noticed it. That says the parties agree that any and all disputes or claims be brought in the party's individual capacity and not as a plaintiff, the class member, reported class, collective representative, or other consolidated group. There's another reference to the lawsuits, right? That says they can't that they won't use arbitration if they're part of a class action. Attorney fees and costs are recoverable through that process. Arizona law dictates the contract, this agreement rather, because we are in the state of Arizona. Copies and counterparts are legal. So if there's something that needs to be executed, we don't have to meet in person. I can send this through an email, and I ask them, are you familiar with DocuSign? Just about everybody is, or an electronic signature platform. There that is. The entire agreement is not one page, but all the addenda, all the attachments. I always remind people, we are very good at keeping track of everything, but this is page 3 of 3. If you always look at the bottom of the pages to find out, number one, how many pages are there? Because we do a lot of this digitally, and sometimes errors or glitches occur. So make sure that all of the pages are accounted for. And that's just a friendly reminder. Capacity. Buyer warrants the buyer's legal capacity, full power, and authority to enter into this agreement and consummate the transaction contemplated hereby on buyer's own behalf or on behalf of the party buyer represented as appropriate. Oh my gosh, what the heck is that? And I tell them, to sum this thing up, This just says you have legal capacity to enter into a contractual agreement. And that you are of, as they say, of sound mind and body. Like, listen, you seem like a pretty good person. I mean, your name? Bobby. Bobby, you seem like a decent person. There's nothing that's alerted to me that you're a crazy person. And so I'm gonna default to the opinion that you know exactly what's happening here and that you have the full authority to enter into this. And I know I've been doing this long enough. I've seen crazy. You're not that. Acceptance. This is where we accept. This is where we both agree. And that's a wrap. Questions? Comments? Helpful?
I have a question.
There it is.
This is Debbie. I'm sorry, I'm online.
Okay, guys, it's only 10:50. You got through a lot of stuff and a lot of content in a fairly short amount of time. So great job. So I'm gonna try to get through this in 5 minutes. Who was here at our last office meeting, which was what, last week, 2 weeks ago, when I went over the buyer broker compliance? Okay. So I'm gonna go over this. I'm gonna try to do this in 5 minutes or less. We're gonna try to get you out of here at 11 o'clock. So you've been here for 1 hour. And Paul presented the buyer broker agreement from a sales side, a presentation side, how it benefits the buyer, how it benefits you. I'm going to talk about it from the broker compliance side. Okay. And what Paul did in 50 minutes, I'm going to do in 5 minutes.
The stage is yours.
Okay.
Hey, you're very welcome, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Great job. Outstanding job. Okay, guys. So there are 10 steps here. The name of this document here is JP's 10 points to remember about the new buyer broker agreement. And some of you probably already have this. If you don't and you want it, shoot me a text message, send me an email, I'll send it to you. So there are 10 things here that I'd like to chat with you about, again, with regards to the compliance and the broker side of the buyer broker agreement. Number one is it's now required, as Paul stated. So gone are the days when an agent would tell me, well, JP, you're always encouraging me to use the buyer broker agreement, but I don't want to for fear that they're going to not want to sign it and work with another agent that doesn't require it. Okay, those days are gone. So now all agents are required. So that's number one, they're required. Number two, there are 2 buyer broker agreements, the exclusive buyer broker agreement, which is what we have here. And of course, the what?
The show property.
That's right. Agreement to show property. So what's the main difference between the two? Commitment, exactly. So the exclusive buyer broker agreement, they're committed to you, right? You've heard, if you've taken any training classes on this, you've heard, it's like marriage versus dating. Exactly. There you go. So they're committed to you with the exclusive employment agreement. They're not committed to you with the agreement to show property. If you use the agreement to show property, you're only paid if your name is on the purchase contract, right? If your name is on the purchase contract, you'll be paid. So what happens if you show a home to a buyer? Let's say 123 Main Street, twice on Friday for some reason, Saturday afternoon, and then twice again on Sunday because they wanted a couple family members to see it. You showed them 5 times in 3 days. And then Monday comes and you get a phone call from them saying, hey, great news. I actually bought that house this morning with another agent. Great news, right? Do you have the right to the commission? No, not anymore. You don't. Some people are thinking, guys, I see the thought bubbles above your head. Procuring cost doesn't exist anymore. There is no such thing as procuring. That was a big deal that our designated broker, Ron Kopis, had to deal with a lot of procuring cause arbitrations. Guess how many he deals with now? Zero. It went from this to literally nothing. So you only get paid as a buyer's agent if you have the buyer broker agreement with them or the agreement to show property. So that's number 2 of 10. Number 3, all documents need to be uploaded into SkySlope within 3 days, or you get the compliance team who asks you for a document delay letter. Number 4 of 10, line number 34, 35, and 36 of this document. 34, you put a percentage, or excuse me, 33. 34, you put a percentage. Got the numbers wrong here. 34, 35, 36. Let's focus on 36. 36 says other. And perhaps I was returning a phone call and I didn't hear this if Paul went over that. Do you know what goes in the other line? What would be an example?
Bill at 4%. Well, I guess that's not true. Well, I guess it.
I guess it could be, but that's not the answer I'm looking for.
You should
If it's
put
4%, why don't you just put 4% in line number 34? Right. Go ahead, Marla.
A combination of percent plus dollar. amount.
Percent plus a dollar amount or percent and a dollar amount? Those are two different answers. The one you said,
Plus.
percent plus a dollar amount, exactly. That, what Marla said is correct. So line 36 would be an example of the two of them. So 3% plus $5,000. Okay, I said the plus, I said that a little bit louder because it can't be 3% or $5,000 or 3% or $5,000, whatever's more, whatever's great. You can't do that. It could be a combination of the two, but it can't be one or the other. So 3% plus $5,000 would be the answer to that question. Question being what goes on line 36? What would be an example of other? Okay, number 5 out of 10. We're going through this pretty quickly. Number 5 out of 10. Buyer broker compensation cannot be a penny greater than what's on your buyer broker agreement. So if you have a buyer broker agreement for say 3% and the seller's offering 4%, prior to August of 2024, and a lot of people in this room have been in the business far longer than that. Prior to August of 2024, you as the agent would get that compensation. Not anymore. You can't get a penny more than what's on your buyer broker agreement. So now that same scenario, buyer broker agreement says 3%. Seller's offering 4%. Who gets that extra 1%? The buyer does, yes, assuming the lender allows it. Assuming the lender allows it. So if your buyer broker agreement says X% and the seller's offering Y%, it's X% is what you're going to get. Okay, that's number 5 of 10. Number 6.
JP, can I ask a
Here's one I
question
see a
about
couple
that?
times a week. Buyer broker compensation is not based on seller participation. So sometimes I'll see 34, 35, and 36 blank. And down in the additional terms, line 78, it will say buyer's agent is happy with whatever seller is offering. Right? You can't do that because buyer broker compensation is now negotiated prior to showing homes. Again, that was never the case. You sound like a broken record, but August of 2024, a big change happened in the industry. So buyer broker compensation is no longer dependent on any seller participation at all. The buyers pay the buyer broker compensation. And of course, use the seller compensation then to get some or all of that back. Okay, that's number 6 of 10. Number 7 is if you need to modify the buyer broker agreement in any way, the term, the compensation amount, anything else, maybe a particular area, maybe they have an agent in Gilbert that they want to work with, but they just don't trust that you know the area, or they sense that you don't like driving out to Gilbert every day of the week. So they partner. So you change and modify the buyer broker agreement. Do you speak from experience, Bobby?
Yes.
Okay, I believe that several people probably do. There's a document to change the terms of the buyer broker agreement. And I always call it the buyer broker agreement addendum. But if you look up buyer broker agreement addendum, you're never going to find it. Anybody know what it's called? Bailey's got it right. It's called the buyer tenant. Stop right there. I don't have a tenant. I understand, but this is what the form's called. Called the buyer tenant broker agreement addendum. Or employment, excuse me. Buyer tenant employment agreement addendum. Okay, because we have a buyer broker agreement. We have a tenant broker agreement, but that's not required. Tenant broker agreements are not required. Buyer broker agreements are. So we have a buyer broker agreement, we have a tenant broker agreement, and then any modifications to either one of those is on the same form called the buyer tenant employment agreement addendum. Okay. Okay, so that is number 7. Number 8. Number 8. Should you make any changes in compensation changes up in compensation? So let's say it's an example where, again, 3% is what's on the buyer broker agreement, 4% is what's being offered, and you want to increase it to get that 4%. You use the buyer tenant employment agreement addendum, but we need to add language in there, okay? And you can write it down if you want, or again, you can send me an email and I'll send you literally what I'm reading here. So in the additional terms section of the buyer tenant employment agreement addendum, we're going to put buyer and buyer broker agree to increase buyer broker compensation to X%. And here's the important part. Buyer acknowledges that an increase in buyer broker compensation may eliminate any credit. I'll go slow because some of you are writing it down. Any credit potentially owed to buyer as referenced in line 41 through 43 of the buyer broker agreement. Okay. So buyer and buyer broker hereby agree to increase buyer broker compensation to X% of the purchase price. Buyer acknowledges that an increase in buyer broker compensation may eliminate any credit potentially owed to the buyer. And we can stop right there depending on if you're using the exclusive or the non-exclusive agreement. So make sure you have that in your additional clause, or excuse me, in your buyer tenant employment agreement addendum. Okay, number 9 out of 10. Number 9 out of 10. So you have a buyer broker agreement uploaded to SkySlope within 3 days of the client signing it. Go out and show homes. You start a pre-contract, you go out and show homes, goes under contract. For whatever reason, during the inspection period, or maybe there's an appraisal issue, for whatever reason, the deal dies. The deal dies. So you cancel the final on SkySlope, you get back in your car, you go show them some more homes for maybe a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, and then you go under contract again, right? So then you upload the buyer broker agreement to SkySlope, and what's the compliance team going to say? Late doc delay. That's correct. And why is that? Because it's uploaded late. In their mind, it's uploaded late because the date is probably 4 months earlier, right? So that's where we want to put in the notes section, notes or comments, whatever the word is, in SkySlope that says buyer broker agreement previously uploaded and approved to 123 Main Street that canceled. Okay. And then you won't have the requirement of the doc delay letter. Okay, number 10. Number 10. And we're doing great on time. Number 10. We'll be out of here in 60 seconds. Number 10. Whether you use, and I know for sure it's in Transaction Desk, I think it's available or something similar in SkySlope forms or in Zip forms if anybody's using Zip forms. I know. How's AZ? We have 2 members of Paul's team up here. It's in Zip forms. Sometimes you'll get some pushback from the buyer. Paul went over that maybe somebody's bought several homes in their life and nobody's ever asked me to sign this before. I'm not signing it. There is a flyer, and that's what it's called, the flyer. The buyer broker representation flyer is what it's called in Transaction Desk. Buyer broker representation flyer. It's a 1-page cute little form flyer that NAR created for you to hand to your clients that explains, hey, the rule changed. All buyers across the country are now required to sign a buyer broker agreement with an agent. Okay. So make use of that too if you're getting pushback from your client, in addition to everything that Paul had taught you. Okay, that's my 10. Any questions?
JP, can you hear
Go
me?
ahead.
This is Debbie.
Question, so, I know I'll be in this class too, but as if I.
Yeah, they clearly can't hear us online. We'll have to wait for him to pay attention to us.
Disclose what my client's willing to compensate until we get under contract.
If you represented the seller, but not the buyer, so not dual agency, you represent the seller.
I'd be a fool to disclose that because then this buyer's agent goes into the buyer.
Correct. You wouldn't disclose it. That's correct. You wait to get the seller compensation addendum. Yeah, because maybe it'll be higher if it's a really good offer. Maybe it'll be lower if it's a crappy offer, right? Go ahead, Adrian.
Let's just, see if there was any zone questions.
Oh, that's a good question. I can't see him here. I can see him in my office. But they can hear me on Zoom. If you can hear me on Zoom, I'm going to run in my office in 1 minute and I'll answer any questions you have there. Yeah, that's why you get here early to make sure your tech is set up correctly. You're not scrambling.
You're over on your time. I just thought I'd mention that.
Okay. Go ahead, Paul.
You have a buyer broker agreement signed and you have one property, you use the buyer tenant employment agreement addendum for that one specific property. If that offer or house fails, does the original buyer broker continue to be in effect?
Well, you're gonna have to say that question again. I think you lost me there,
You
Paul.
have
Say
a
it
buyer
again.
broker agreement signed for, let's say, 3 or 4%, whatever.
Okay.
You have one house and you have to reduce your commission. But, you know, you agree to do it with the buyer, you use the buyer tenant employment agreement addendum.
Yes.
And you put it on there in the additional terms for this property that you're located at.
You can, yes.
And then that offer, you know, it dies, it doesn't work.
Right.
Your original buyer broker agreement is still in effect.
That is correct. That is correct. And that's a good question. So you can take that even a step further. And in the, you can do it here, but really the ideal spot would be the additional term section. You could put in the additional term section, X% for resale, X% for new build. You can put X% for resale, X% for new build, X% for homes in purchased in the city of Mesa. Another percentage for homes purchased in Surprise. You can actually do that. 10% for Mesa, that's right.
100% Bill.
Okay. Adrian, did people can you see, do they have questions online on Zoom?
No, it was just, text, there's a few that are, I think it's,
Okay,
Sabrina had a question.
I
Sabrina's
have a
right here.
question.
The other Sabrina, okay. I guess
Poor
there's more than
Debbie,
one
I'm so
Sabrina.
sorry.
It happens.
There's another.
It's like,
somebody
hello.
Okay, guys, we're on
Hello?
to the questions. Thank you.
He's gonna go into his office.
And if you can hear me on Zoom, I'm walking into my office and I'll answer any questions you have in less than 30 seconds. Hi, Zoom people. Can you all
Hello?
hear me?
Yes, this is Debbie. Can you hear me?
Let's see. It looks like Debbie's trying to talk, but I can't hear her.
Can
Let's see if
you-
I can.
Can you hear
unmute.
me, JP?
Debbie, there you are. You show you're unmuted. Okay, you should be good now, Debbie. Say it again.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, here's my two questions is when they were talking about how the other agent was saying that he was interfering with compensation through the transaction, but yet there was no executed contract for it to be a transaction. So when should the seller's addendum be signed? Obviously prior to, I know there's going to be a course on that. So the seller's addendum for compensation should be signed prior to the contract.
No, the seller compensation addendum, SCA. Now it's easy, but in the early days, I can never remember the damn name of that form. I got 50 forms in my head. So SCA, seller compensation addendum, like SCA, sellers, Southern California. That is signed, that is part of the purchase contract. So you're checking on the bottom of page 1 of the purchase contract, the seller compensation box on the bottom of page 1, and you're including the seller compensation addendum along with the offer.
Okay. And then my next question is, when they were talking about compensation on this form here, will we check either a percentage or a flat fee or a price? And then in the other terms and conditions, so in the event the seller is offering 4% and we're putting on here 3%, on that bottom line, under the price number, can we put in the event seller is offering more compensation than, no, okay,
No, because seller participation is not, well, the short answer is no, you can't.
okay,
No, but you use that addendum, the seller tenant, buyer tenant employment agreement addendum to modify it.
okay, got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And you know, there's a lot of changes. Some of them I'm happy with, others I'm not a big fan of. But the thought process from the legal team that I spoke with, or not I spoke with, but I listened to, was that you know your buyer side compensation is negotiated and agreed to and approved prior to showing homes. If you find a buyer or a seller willing to pay you more, your skills, the quantity or quality of your skills did not improve. You just happen to find a seller willing to pay more. So that's why you can't do that.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Sabrina, did you have a question?
No, I was originally just trying to help Debbie get her question answered, but I didn't know that we could put in the additional terms, like 3% for resale, 4% for new build. I didn't know we could do that.
Yep, we sure can. Yep, you sure can.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep. Yeah, rarely do I see that, and maybe rarely do I see it because I don't know a lot of agents even know about it, but that's a good point. But you can do it. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Let's look in the chat box here. Can everybody hear me? Yes. NTR, thanks for the great walkthrough. From Darren Smith. I'm telling Adrian to tell him Debbie has a question. Okay. Okay, guys, if you're done, I'm good. Thank you for attending the class, and we have another one next Wednesday on the listing agreement. Okay, thank you.
I love that. Michelle, you got the good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're done, Irma.
yeah, so.